All right. Welcome to the MyMegoLike YouTube channel. That's correct. This will be our very first episode of our relaunch. I'm going to try and do things a little bit different than what we do on our live stream. So the MyMegoLike channel, you may ask, what's it about? Is it about Migos? It could be, but it's more about action figures in general and a lot of the knockoffs. I've been an avid, well, I was started as an avid collector back in the late 90s, and Mego was the big gold G.I. Joe, Big Jim, and then I kind of got really interested in all these knockoff figures. And if you take a look around, we have this toy room of solitude, and I keep most of my collection here, not all of it, most of it, but some really cool pieces in here that I've been able to collect with the help of other collectors and being in groups and sharing and Evil Bay, if you will, and all that stuff and other auction places. But what we really want to do here is we want to talk about action figures. We're going to probably focus on knockoffs mostly, and bootlegs, knockoffs, whatever you want, but related to the Mego style figure, 8-inch, possibly 9-inch, a little shorter, whatever, because there's so many out there. There's a ton. And we'll also be doing things like opening packages that come in the mail. The frequency, I'm not sure. Really depends on my work schedule. I'll try and do it. Sometimes I do it every day for a week, and then sometimes I don't do it for 2 weeks. But they'll be posted up here. So if you like and subscribe, you can get notified and so on. Anyway, so the premise behind this, or the start of this was, and the reason it's MyMegoLike is, in '97 I started collecting action figures. Made a friend, husband of my wife's at the time best friend, and we hit it off. And he's like, "Hey man, you want to go to the show and get Adam West's, Batman signature?" I'm like, "All right." So we go, and I see this couple tables, not many, just a few, and I see these old toys on them. And I walk over, and this is very distinct for me. This was 1997, and I look at the table, and they have these Planet of the Apes figures. Now, at the time, I didn't know what Mego was. I didn't know the company, if you will. I knew the toys. I remember having some of the Batman, the superheroes, and Planet of the Apes, maybe, but I didn't really know. I didn't know the name Mego. It meant nothing to me. So I said to the guy, "Oh, these are pretty cool." So I took out my wallet. I'm like, "Oh, there's some old toys. All right." See what he wants from them. It's garage sale, right? Kind of style. I'll give him $5. Maybe he'll give them to me. And he's like, "Well, they're $150 a piece." I'm like, "How much?" It's like $150 a piece. This was 1997. I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "This is old junk." He goes, "Dude, these are collectible." So I was kind of shocked, and I started turning to my friend Frank, and I'm like, "What's up?" And he explained all this to me. This is all collectible stuff. So we went on, and I kind of raced home, and was telling people about it, how I saw this stuff. And the way that it really got started after that show was that my was who to be my future brother-in-law, but a friend of mine, said, "Hey man, I just bought my parents' house." I said, "Yeah," and he goes, "I'm in the attic, and I found a box of old toys. They have these like action figures in there. They sound like the ones you were kind of looking at. Do you want to come get them?" So sure. So I jump in their car and I go up. He gives me a box, probably about a shoe box, and there's probably about 7 or 8 figures in there, and they're all in. The figures were together, but the shoes and the clothes were all over the place. So Dracula was in there, and a couple other figures, some Star Trek and so on, and just was able to put them together, like figure them out and put them together. Now, again, you got to remember, back in this time, the internet was still new for most home users. I'd been using it for many years before people were on it because of my work, but it was something that was new in the home. And the internet was not even called that. They usually called it the World Wide Web. Anyway, I started searching for these things, and I found at the time what was the original Mego Museum by Scott Adams, and it was just pictures with galleries. It was very well done as far as the creative content, and I was like, "Wow, this is really cool." And it didn't. There's no chat rooms. There was no advertisers. None of that. It was just information with pictures. And I was like, "Oh, that's pretty cool." And as I looked a little deeper, it led to links like the Big Red Toy Box. And that's where I got into some of my first auctions. Eventually, eBay became another one. And back in those days, you'd bid on eBay, and people would be bidding so much they'd crash the system before the auctions were over and everything went to shit. You also didn't have to log in. You didn't have to buy anything. You could leave feedback for anybody. So they didn't really care. If any guys knew John Hendy from back in the day, John is a really funny guy. John used to go into my eBay account, or find me, not in my account, but go into my thing, and he just put crazy negative feedback. Like, this is a very, very, what did he say? He just put some like funny shit. Like, it doesn't even make sense. So he'd put all this stuff up. We would just go back and forth. He put things like selling his soul, starting price $1, shit like that, crazy stuff. Anyway, so progressed forward, I started collecting, but the Mego Museum had really good stuff on the Mego figures, and I learned a lot about them and so on. But as I was going through, one of the things I also found was a website called Raymond Castile's uh, Gallery of Monster Toys. That website's still up there. It's the galleryofmonstertoys.com by the horror host himself, the master of monsters, Mr. Ray Castile. Ray's an amazing guy, knowing him today. But back then, I didn't know him. I just saw his website and had all these different 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s action figures. So I'm looking at them, and I start seeing these other action figures. One of the first things I saw were the Azrac Hamley International or A-Hive figures. There were some monsters and Lincoln monsters and the Tomlin figures, and they all caught my eye, and I started looking for them, kind of going around. And that really, Ray's site was really the inspiration for all of it. Like the Mego Museum was nice, don't get me wrong, it was great. It was good for the Mego, and I was always checking to see what parts I needed, whatever. But Ray brought me into that other genre of MyMegoLike figures. So from that, I said, you know what? I started collecting, and I started buying Tomlins. And back those days, Tomlins you could get for $15 to $35. Now they're hundreds. It's ridiculous. And one day, one of these YouTubes will go through all the Tomlins I have. I got a whole big ass shelf full. Still a ton more to go, and so on. And we'll go through these things as time goes on, because there's a whole other section down there and over there and so on. Anyway, so Ray got me into that whole piece, and I started collecting. As I looked around, the one thing I noticed, the only sites that had anything that wasn't really Mego or G.I. Joe or Big Jim or some specific brand, at that point, really, the only one I could find at the time was Ray's site. It was dedicated to monster figures. And I said, well, what about figures like, like this guy? Like, who's this guy? Right? Who's this guy right here? Right? Well, you know him today, it's Mighty Gary or Mighty Neil, and they remolded the A-Hive bodies by the hands, so we can go into all that and so on, and he's in an age format, but there's really nothing like that. So eventually they opened chat rooms in the Mego Museum besides the post, and we started talking. So I decided I'm going to put up a website. So I started building my first website in HTML 1.0. It took hours to do pages back then. No wizards, none of that shit. You hand coded everything. Oh my god, you should do it. Notepad and hand code it. Sorry guys, it's late here. I get much sleep, but I started building this webpage, and it was called the Collectible Action Figures Gallery.com. Imagine having to type all that shit out. Oof, that was a lot. So eventually, as I started, bringing more stuff in and creating categories, I started asking people, hey, do you have stuff that maybe you want to put up? I'll give you credit. Send me your pictures, email them to me, and I'll give you credit, courtesy of Joe Smith, Frank James, whatever. And I started getting more and more and more submissions. I had so many submissions sometimes it would take me a couple of weeks to get everything up on the page. It was a lot, but I was getting all this information, and all these people would send stuff in and stuff about their figures and so on. And there's a lot of stuff I got in from guys like Anthony McElveen. If you don't know Anthony is just a great guy. For those of you who have met him before, he's great. He has an awesome collection, one of the best collections you will ever see. It's stored, I know, but he has more shit than anybody you think. Yes, and more than probably somebody you're thinking about right now. There were other guys out there, and they sent stuff, and we would talk all the time, and we get more and more pictures. People send them in. Then I start getting emails like, hey, what's this? And I'm like, I don't know what this is. I have to look it up and see what it is. Eventually, you start to get a little good at it. So after, I think, 2 years of doing that, I was contacted by a gentleman to go to Mego Meet and talk about knockoffs. He's like, we really would like to have you come. You seem to know a lot of stuff. We'd like to come and talk about it. I'm like, what the hell am I going to talk about? We've been doing this a couple of years. So I went, put up a presentation, and it was called Mego Knockoffs, The Other White Meat. And it was all figures that were related to Mego that were ripped off and knocked off. So we know Marty Abrams kind of got that 8-inch action figure and the licensing stuff going. Some people call him the father of the modern action figure. I don't. I think Don Levine, the guy who got G.I. Joe going, is really the father of the modern day action figure. But Marty specialized in making 8-inch figures that you could repurpose things, so they saved money by just pulling the head off, putting a new one on, and so on. Good for them. Fantastic. Anyway, moving forward. So all this stuff started coming about, started putting on this website, and it got collecting. And I collected for a long time. Then I had a flood in my basement. I think it was probably about, let's see, it was about 20 years, I think. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry, 10 years. I'm sorry, 10 years, and I got to flood the basement. I was like, fuck this. I can't deal with this shit anymore. So I sold as much as I could. I got into classic cars, started buying some of those. And then in about 2018, I got contacted by the same friend who got me into the first show, got me interested in this stuff. He says, hey, man, there's Megos at Target. What? He said, dude, there's Mego action figures at Target. I'm thinking, are they getting old stuff and auction them? So I went to Target, and sure enough, we see the new Mego figures. Be honest with you, not a fan. For a lot of reasons, many of you already know. If you know me, you know why I'm not a fan. That doesn't mean you can't buy them. You want to buy them, buy them. I don't care. That's up to you. Enjoy them. Enjoy your collecting. It is your collection. You buy what you want. Buy what you want. I don't care. You want to buy Barbie, you want to buy Big Jim, buy whatever you want. That's good for you. It's fantastic. And you should enjoy it. That's what it's about. It's what stems in you. Things that stem in me are these figures. Now, I never had any of these knockoffs as kids. No Tomlins, none of these crazy knockoffs I had. I never had Azric Hamway. I never had Lincoln. Any of those things. But I did have Migos. I did have G.I. Joe. I did have the Steve Austin figure. I did have Big Jim. But these other ones, and Lone Ranger. But these figures are, and those are the common ones back in the 70s, I think. But these figures, these knockoffs are really cool. Sometimes they're hard to find. Sometimes you'll find something crazy. So I can tell you, for example, I've been now, if you continue all my years collecting without the pause, so we're in this about 25 years. And sometimes you think you've seen it all, and then something pops up that you haven't seen, like this. We'll go into this. And this is Bronco. Now, the card's kind of coming across, right? He's a 9-inch action figure. He's got the same style hands as an Excel figure. It kind of looks almost like they got a finger for pulling the trigger. He has no moccasins on. He's got this very bright outfit, and he's got some cheap plastic, a tomahawk, I guess it will, and a big old knife in there in his belt. What's interesting about this figure is, I believe he's from Germany. The company's called Welo, W-E-L-O. I guess that's how we pronounce it in English. He's either from Germany or he's from maybe Holland. I think it's Germany. I have to kind of double check this language. I forgot to do that before we got on. But what's interesting is they have this picture of this figure, and the card, there's nothing on the back. If you look at the figure, there's a photograph. Now, if you know anything about collecting knockoffs, what you're going to see is that this is a horse. It's not posable. It's just a knockoff, just a horse for an 8-inch action figure. This action figure that we're looking at here, this is an 8-inch action figure of Mighty Gary or Mighty Neil, or also known as Soldano Mike, the same figure I showed you before. If you take a look at the size, he is quite a bit smaller, he's shorter, and he's also more mature in stature. This is more like a Big Jim figure. Okay, this guy is the same figure in that picture. He just doesn't have those clothes on. Matter of fact, those clothes look a little Action Jackson to me. This figure here is not this Indian. You may not know, and it might be hard to see in this video, but this figure is actually made by More Toys. It's actually made by More Toys, and you could see even by the hands, he's got the kind of the different hands and so on. It's made by More Toys. He's also an 8-inch action figure, and he comes on this card, which is the 8-inch Wild West figure by Mort Alexander Limited at the bottom, which is also known as More Toys. This happens to be the villain. If you recognize him, you'll see him in the Excel Kojak police playset that you could order from a catalog from Montgomery Ward's, and it came as a flat kind of cardboard thing. You put it together, and he came as the villain. He didn't have the cowboy hat. Instead of a cowboy gun, 6-shooter, he came with a little snub pistol like the Kojak figure had. But what's interesting and I love about this is they use somebody else's action figures to sell this. I'll show you in another day when we do another thing on Empire Toys. Empire made a lot of Jeeps and different, same Jeep, same old, but they put them in brown, they put them in pink, they put them in red, and they just give them all different names. But what's interesting about those is they took other action figures and put them in the Jeeps and photographed them, and that was the outside of the Jeep. And I'll show you that one day. Sometimes they use Barbie knockoffs, sometimes they use the Sunshine Family, and they're putting them in. So they're using other manufacturers' toys to sell their stuff, which I thought was pretty cool. So what's interesting about these Welos, if you will, and I bought these 3 from a guy overseas. These 2, other than them being on, cards kind of a little bit different, say cracked. And if you look at this new City, I think that's new series. don't know if it's German. I'm not quite the year, but it's got to be probably the 80s. If they've got Mighty Gary in here, it's probably the late 70s, early 80s on here. But if you take a look and you look at his face, he's got 2 white paint marks on each cheek, one here, one here. This is another Bronco on the exact same card, same outfit, if you will, same card. But upon closer inspection, after I bought him, I realized he's a different face. He actually has a molded in feather. He's only got 1 white mark on each cheek, and he also has this white mark down on his chin. So he's actually different. So thanks to Dinosaur Dan Samillo. If you guys know Dan Samillo, you know he's a great guy. He's been at this collecting thing probably longer than I have, if not as long. And Dinosaur Dan gave me a point out recently for some more Bronco figures. He's like, take a look at these. And when I went and looked, they also made carded outfits for them. Sort of something like this, just a box, with clothes in there or something. So I ordered the 2 Indian outfits. They'll be on their way, and we'll show that in another video when they get there. But along these lines, if you take a look, this is the More Toys Alexander. They're very hard to find on the card. They did come in boxes, mail order boxes, and they came in other ways. But this I love. It's a color card. And one of the things that's funny about all these Western knockoff figures, other than these Bronco ones that are using knockoff figures, Mego knockoff figures to sell their knockoff figure, this one actually was stealing the artwork from the Lone Ranger boxes, redoing it, and putting it up as their own. Matter of fact, it showed up quite a bit. They're not the only ones that did that. A-High with their adventurer set, with their cowboy and the Indian and so on. Actually, I should have brought those up. But they actually stole, literally, Lone Ranger artwork. They just took his mask off in the drawing and put it back on, but they're all along the same line. So all these companies were using the popularity of something that was selling to launch their own stuff. Well, the reason we have this, obviously, Mighty Gary, also known as Mighty Neil or Soldado Mike, depending what box he came in, and I'm bringing them up, is because he's the one in that picture. It's a different outfit. But they came with everything from carded things like Soldado Mike, which is Soldier Mike in Italian. And they saw all the outfits on the back. These are very similar to the Action Jacksons. As a matter of fact, a lot of the pieces in here, in some of these outfits, are actually Mego pieces. So that's Soldado Mike. This is Mighty Neil. I can show you the same outfit in Mighty Neil. This just happens to be the snow set, which is really just like the one from Action Jackson. Notice the back of the card's the same. They just changed the font and they changed the wording. Now let's take a little bit of a step further, and I'll show you another figure. This is Soldado Mike in his box. And take a look at back, same artwork, if you will. They're all red, white, and blue. We're going to go a little bit further and go back to this 9-inch scale that we have with Bronco, and I'm going to show you that they also made almost the same thing, but instead of military and so on, these are actually sports. So they made sport figures. These are the Action All-Stars by Premier. This one actually happens to be coming open because the box opened. So we can show that. This one is missing the baseball because they put in with tape and the tape dried. The baseball fell out. That's a shame. But these are 9-inch outfits. They're the same style box that they ripped off from Mighty Gary, Mighty Neil. I mean, these guys were all, I put these glasses on because there's a little something here. These guys were all ripping off for each other all day. And that, for me, is the beauty of the knockoffs. Now, one thing that's really funny about these action figures and these sets, what cracks me up, is that a lot of these, so here, Mighty Neil, Mort Alexander, right here. There's the Mort Alexander. Soldado Mike has a different logo, and that little logo right there, that's Cheppy Ratty. And we'll go into those more in another show, but you can still see the picture on the front. It's the same. These guys were all living off these factories in Hong Kong, doing their own thing, stealing each other's stuff, and basically paying to get their stuff out to their to their fans and their action figures and the kids at the time. So what does that all mean? It basically means that there's a shitload of knockoffs, and it probably means there's a whole bunch of stuff that we haven't even found yet we don't know about. These Bronco figures were new to me just this past year, 2021. I've been collecting a long time. What I did also was able to get are these. And these came from Europe. This, my friends, is a 9-inch version of what would have been Mighty Gary or Mighty Neil. He's got the crazy eyes. If you take a look, crazy eyes on him. He's barely marked. He's marked here. If you were to look very carefully and I zoom in, the part that probably says made in Hong Kong or whatever manufacturer, it's been wiped out. You can see just a little bit in there, and you'll see that a lot of times. But this gives you an idea what the body looks like. Plastic, you got these plastic elbows. They did put rivets in for the knees, so that's interesting. I always find it interesting. They went to the trouble to do it in the knees, and they didn't do it in the arms. They don't know why, because those things eventually will break. But take a look at the hands. These hands with this kind of one finger kind of pointing type thing, if you will, for holding a gun or so on, and they're hard plastic. These hands were used for Excel Toys Kojak, for the Excel Toys Wild West figures, and the Lone Ranger has the same set, the same kind of hands on, and they're all just knocking shit off of each other all day. It's really, really amazing to see this stuff. So this is just another figure, if you will. And there's a series out there called Il Mondo Avventuroso, right? Which the World of Adventure, and it features Jack Black, Tommy Bright, and Jimmy Brown. And they're 8-inch knockoff figures. One of them's Tommy Bright. He's blonde. Jimmy Brown looks pretty much like this guy. And then there's Tommy Black, and he pretty much looks like this guy in an 8-inch version. Those are also very difficult to find, unless you know where to look, if you will, because they're becoming more scarce. So all these figures, they all knock off of each other. They've all been stealing from each other, but there's so many varieties that come out. We've also here's another Mighty Gary, Mighty Neil. You could take a look. If you look at the hands, and we'll go into another show, that these are actually the same style hands that the A-Hire Azrac Hamway International Cowboys, Indians, and Monsters also used. This is another More Toys figure, but take a look at him. It's a Mighty Neil figure, Mighty Gary. He doesn't have a beard. Well, we know Mego made an Action Jackson with and without a beard. They also made him in white. They made him in black. But take a look at the arms. He's got these rubber arms, and I'm not bending these because there's a wire in there, and you know that wire is going to break after all these years. But there's a rubber arm there instead of this plastic hinged arm that they have here, and those are plastic hinges, so you have to be careful. Going a little further and keep moving forward, other companies, what's this made in Hong Kong, Captain Eagle figure. Captain Eagle is like an Action Jackson figure. He came in the blue suit, the same AJ white boots, same stretchy white rubber band, came in a plastic header bag. Said Captain Eagle. It's kind of neat. Gets a little hard to find, a little expensive. I think I have 2 of them. But the thing that gives him away more than anything else, if you were to take this off, his body, like all these plastic bodies are similar. Some of them they share. A lot of the figures use Tong bodies on all these different companies, but a lot of them have their own. Captain Eagle pretty much has his own. There's only one other figure that I've seen that shares the same body, and that's the knockoff Captain Patch figure that came with the Fighting Furies later when they were trying to sell off their stock. They put the 8-inch pirate with a patch on his eye. It's the same Mego Captain Patch. They just flipped the patch the other eye, and they just changed up the body a little bit, but it's a cheap body. If I was to show it to you, it's just really hollow plastic. It's kind of got these lines here on there, but if you take a look at his face, he's always looking up. He's always looking up. Nobody knows what he's looking at, but somebody said, well, it's Captain Eagle. He's probably seeing he can look up so he can soar. That's very possible. So that's just some of the stuff that we have, as far as like Bronco from Wheelo Toys and Soldado Mike and Mighty Gary. And there's so much more. And we have tons of it in here. We'll go into that more and more. Just kind of want to do like the first show, a little bit of stuff, what we're doing in there. We also have things to talk about. Lone Ranger figures. We have knockoff Tomlins, Azrac Hamway, Lincoln International. We have these Mexican bootlegs. Nobody even knows the real maker of them. They're incredibly rare. They're incredibly ridiculous. Super expensive. We've got Captain Action. We've got the remake of Captain Action. We've got Castaway Toys. We've got the Castaway Toys G.I. Joes. We've got Plastic Zombie Toys, Filoni's Fabrications, all these other toys that we can bring in. I mean, we could just talk for months, maybe years about all this stuff. What we're going to try and do is like bring it down and talk a little bit about each one. And when the next video comes out, because it will be done live, you guys will be able to post your comments and so on. Right, so this one's just going to be pre-recorded. But there's so many things to show you guys. I just want to kind of give you guys a little sample what's there. We'll go into more carded sets. I'll show you some really rare shit. There's a really rare figure called Big Bill. I have him in the original mailer box. He's still in the plastic. It's unbelievable the stuff that comes with it. Some of the parts are marked Mego, some are not. He has some unique pieces that I've never seen any other action figure. He's got some cheap Hong Kong stuff, and he's got some really cool stuff like miniature guns that shoot miniature, tiny little bullets. They're spring loaded, so they'll shoot, and so on. So let's get to the next part because I can't be on too late because I'm a little tired today. We're gonna open up. This is what we like to call the what's in the mail, and I've been doing what's in the mail for a long time, for years, and it kind of was just me sitting at my kitchen table with my daughter, open up boxes and seeing what kind of toys were inside, and then it kind of evolved a little bit, it became a little more interactive, and I met a lot of friends through it. Just interacting, watching videos, and sharing, and so on. I don't really know what this is. For all I know, it could be, who knows? From eBay, so I'm sure it's something that you want. Oh, I do know what this is. I remember. I do remember. This is a good one. All right, so we'll have to go into this a little further. I forgot about this. This did come today. So I've got some Lone Ranger, not a huge collection. I got other friends that are fellow collectors that are got really nice Lone Ranger collections, and I was talking for some of the stuff, and this actually is not bad. So this is a set I got for really cheap. It's a kind of a UK only. It's marked Mark's Toys down here. Mark's Toys is one of the places that took over the Lone Ranger, or had the Lone Rangers. We have Hubley. I'll do that another time. We have Hubley as well. But this here is the Lone Ranger Rides Again, The Adventures of the Kidnappers. Now, that is the cheesiest outfit ever. Reminds me of Herb Tarlick from WKRP in Cincinnati, if you will. But it's a cool set. It's got the Lone Ranger Rides Again with Adventures of the Kidnappers. There's really nothing on the back. It's a UK set. He's got the white hat. He's got the checkered jacket, the checkered pants with the tan trim. He's got the white shirt with the little red bolo tie, and he's got his man, that looks like a handbag. Oh, and it looks like it's already coming out. It is. Yeah, this card is definitely, man, this plastic is definitely old. So we're going to get this into a thing. I was afraid that was going to happen when I was doing that. So he's got a handbag down here. It's like a purse. It's right there. And I'm like, this looks more like a Barbie set than something the Lone Ranger would have. I'm not quite sure why this is the Adventures of the Kidnappers, because he sure as hell looks like he's going shopping. So we're gonna get that into a Ziploc bag or some saran wrap to keep that, because that hat, it was like, as I brought it up, I'm like, oh, it's probably gonna fall out, and it fell out, but that's all right. It was already kind of like busting out of there. But yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff that we have. So that's just it. We're gonna do tonight. It's just a little sample of what's going on. We'll do a lot of stuff open. We got a lot of stuff to come in open. I'll be showing you all kinds of guys that are doing some really great action figures, like plastic zombie toys, castaway toys, random noir, felonious fabrications, customs for people like Tony May, and so on. And we'll bring those up here because we're going to put some attention on them. We're going to give the guys the credit they deserve. So we want this to be a place where you guys can come and talk. And if you're not in the MegoLike Facebook group, I'd suggest you get in there. It's a great place to be. Lots of discussion. You can talk about anything. You really can. You can talk about anything. We don't ban. We don't tell people we're taking your post down, message them in the background, all that stuff. We don't do that. It's an open room. We want people to discuss. We want them to enjoy. We want them to have opposing opinions, so there's something to discuss, right? We're all the same. It'd be boring. It'd just be a robot. So with that, I'm going to say goodnight. I'm going to thank you guys for watching this video, even though nobody's watched it yet because we're still recording it. But the next one will be live. We'll be doing it live on YouTube. And then eventually we might put it back on Facebook. I'm not really sure. Not too thrilled with Facebook right now. Just kind of, they got their own issues going on over there. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you guys enjoy it. Please make sure you check out Johnny Shedrick's MIB Master Toy Museum. Johnny collects everything. He never opens a box. It's all in his basement, his collection. It's fantastic. Dr. Durant's Sanctum, done by Rich Hurley. It's another great YouTube channel. These are both YouTube channels. They're fantastic. Rich does an amazing dive into some really cool monster stuff, and so on. Of course, there's Raymond Castile's Basement of Horror. You can't go wrong with that. Ray is just one incredible individual. He really is, not because of his collecting, but because outside of his collecting, he's a really good dude. He has a lot of really good stuff for people, and one day we'll go into a little more. All right, other than that, guys, I hope everything's great, and good night. Peace.